Everyone at the shop saw him as just another old-timer until someone spotted the Navy SEAL tattoo on his neck. The smell of motor oil and metal shavings hung thick in the air at Rodriguez Auto Repair on the south side of Denver. The garage bay doors were open to catch the morning breeze, and the sound of pneumatic tools echoed off concrete walls covered in decades of grease stains and tool marks. In the far corner, bent over the engine of a 1987 Chevy pickup, worked Sam Mitchell. At 58, Sam moved with the deliberate care of someone whose body had seen better days. A slight hitch in his left knee, careful movements when lifting heavy parts, and the methodical pace of a man who'd learned that rushing led to mistakes. The younger mechanics called him Grandpa Sam behind his back, though never with real malice. To them, he was a relic from an era when repairs took twice as long, because everything was done by hand instead of computer diagnostics. His toolbox was ancient, his methods old school, and his reluctance to embrace new technology was a constant source of eye-rolling among the crew. "Sam's still using a timing light from the Carter administration," joked Tyler Rodriguez, the 24-year-old son of the shop owner, as he plugged his laptop into a BMW's diagnostic port. "I could run 3 diagnostics in the time it takes him to set his points." Jake Morrison, 22 and fresh from technical college, laughed as he watched Sam manually checking the compression on each cylinder. "My grandfather worked slower than that guy. It's like watching history in slow motion." Sam heard the comments, but said nothing. He'd learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting. Instead, he focused on the steady rhythm of his work, checking tolerances with worn but precisely calibrated tools, testing connections with multimeters that had been reliable when these kids were in diapers, and approaching each repair with the systematic thoroughness that had been drilled into him in a very different kind of training. What Tyler and Jake didn't know was that Sam's methodical approach came from places where being thorough meant the difference between mission success and body bags, where rushing got people killed, where the phrase, "good enough," didn't exist in the vocabulary. Sam wore long-sleeved shirts even in summer, keeping covered the faded tattoo that marked him as one of fewer than 3,000 active-duty Navy SEALs. The trident insignia on his shoulder had been earned through 6 months of hell that broke 80% of the men who attempted it. The smaller tattoo on his neck, a simple anchor wrapped in rope, was even more exclusive, marking him as part of SEAL Team 6, the unit that didn't officially exist and whose missions were classified long after the operators retired. But in Rodriguez Auto Repair, Sam was just the old guy who took forever to change spark plugs. The dynamic in the shop had been the same for the 3 years Sam had worked there. The younger mechanics handled the computerized imports while Sam was relegated to the older domestic vehicles and the occasional diesel truck. Owner Miguel Rodriguez appreciated Sam's reliability and craftsmanship, but even he sometimes wished the older mechanic would pick up the pace. Everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon in late August. Sam was under the hood of a Ford F-150, tracing an electrical short that had stumped 2 other mechanics, when the sound of screeching tires filled the garage bay. A black sedan had pulled up fast outside, its engine still running. 4 men got out, moving with the predatory efficiency of people accustomed to violence. They wore dark clothing and sunglasses despite being indoors, and the way they scanned the garage spoke of military or law enforcement training, the wrong kind. "Everyone stop what you're doing," the leader called out, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "This is now a crime scene. We're looking for Miguel Rodriguez." Miguel emerged from his office, confusion written across his face. "I'm Rodriguez. What's this about?" The leader smiled coldly. "Your nephew Carlos has been very busy, Mr. Rodriguez, moving packages for people who don't like witnesses. He owes our employer a significant amount of money, and we're here to collect." "I don't know what you're talking about," Miguel said, but Sam could see the recognition in the shop owner's eyes. Carlos had been trouble since high school. Drugs, gangs, the kind of associations that followed families like shadows. "We know Carlos has been using your shop to move product," another man said, producing a pistol from his jacket. "Our employer wants his money, and he's willing to accept alternative forms of payment." The garage fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of traffic. Tyler had gone pale, his laptop forgotten. Jake had frozen halfway under a Honda Civic. Miguel's two other employees, older men with families, stood with their hands slightly raised. "Here's what's going to happen," the leader continued. "This shop is going to burn. Insurance fire. Very sad. Everyone inside was working late when the electrical system failed." Sam continued working under the Ford's hood, his hands steady as he traced wiring with a voltmeter. To the gunman, he looked like an old man too confused or hard of hearing to understand the situation. In reality, Sam was processing tactical information with the cold efficiency of someone who'd spent 20 years in situations exactly like this. 4 hostiles, all armed, 1 watching the entrance, 2 covering the mechanics, 1 focused on Miguel. Standard intimidation formation, professional but overconfident. They saw a garage full of civilians, not a battleground where the wrong person might be hiding under a truck hood. "Please," Miguel said, his voice shaking. "These men have families. Whatever Carlos owes, we can work something out." "The time for working things out is past," the leader replied. He nodded to one of his men, who began dousing the workbenches with gasoline from a red container they'd brought from their car. That's when Tyler made a mistake, born of youth and panic. He lunged for the door, trying to reach the emergency button that would summon police. He made it 3 steps before one of the gunmen put him down with a precise shot to the leg. Tyler's scream echoed off the concrete walls as he fell, clutching his thigh. Blood seeped between his fingers. "Now you've seen we're serious," the leader said. "Everyone else stays calm, and this ends quickly." Sam emerged from under the Ford's hood slowly, like an old man whose arthritis was giving him trouble. His coveralls were stained with grease, his gray hair was thinning, and he moved with the careful deliberation that had made him the butt of jokes for 3 years. "Excuse me," he said quietly, addressing the nearest gunman. "The boy's bleeding pretty bad. Mind if I take a look?" The gunman glanced at his leader, who shrugged. "Old man wants to play doctor. Let him. Just don't try anything heroic." Sam knelt beside Tyler, examining the wound with hands that remained remarkably steady. The bullet had passed through the fleshy part of the thigh, missing the femoral artery but causing significant bleeding. "You're going to be okay," Sam told Tyler, his voice carrying a calm authority the young man had never heard before. "The round went clean through. Just need to control the bleeding." As Sam worked, applying pressure with a clean shop rag, he noticed something that made his trained eye narrow. One of the gunmen had positioned himself near the main electrical panel. Another was placing what looked like accelerant near the parts storage area. These weren't just intimidation tactics. They were genuinely planning to destroy the building with everyone inside. "There," Sam said, securing the makeshift bandage around Tyler's leg. "That should hold for now." He stood slowly, favoring his left knee, and addressed the leader. "Look, I don't know anything about this Carlos situation, and I'm guessing these other boys don't either. Why don't you let them go and keep me? I'm old, no family. Makes more sense." The leader studied Sam with renewed interest. There was something in the old mechanic's bearing that didn't quite fit the image of a confused senior citizen. "Generous offer, Grandpa, but we can't leave witnesses." Nothing personal. That's when Jake, still partially hidden under the Honda, made his own panicked move. He grabbed a heavy wrench and tried to crawl toward the nearest gunman's legs. The gunman spotted the movement and swung his pistol down. "We got a hero under the—" The gunman never finished the sentence. Sam moved with explosive speed that seemed to violate the laws of physics for a man his age. In one fluid motion, he swept a heavy socket wrench from the nearest workbench and sent it spinning through the air with lethal precision. The wrench caught the gunman in the temple with a sound like a baseball hitting a catcher's mitt. He dropped without a sound. The other 3 gunmen spun toward Sam, but the old mechanic was already moving. 20 years of close-quarters combat training had been dormant but never forgotten, and muscle memory kicked in like a perfectly tuned engine. Sam dove behind a hydraulic lift as gunfire erupted, bullets sparking off concrete and metal. The other mechanics pressed themselves against the floor, too terrified to move. "Who the hell is this guy?" one of the gunmen shouted. Sam didn't answer with words. Instead, he grabbed a pneumatic impact wrench still connected to its air hose and used the compressed air line like a whip. The heavy tool caught the second gunman across the jaw with enough force to lift him off his feet. 2 down. The leader and his remaining man took cover behind a parts counter, their professional calm cracking as they realized they were facing someone with skills that matched their own. "Military?" the leader called out. "Navy," Sam replied calmly, his voice carrying from somewhere in the maze of automotive equipment. Retire. What unit? Sam emerged from behind a tire rack, and for the first time, the collar of his coveralls had shifted enough to reveal the small anchor tattoo on his neck. The leader's eyes widened in recognition. SEAL Team 6 wasn't exactly a secret among certain communities, and the anchor marking was known to anyone who'd operated in similar circles. "Oh, shit," the remaining gunman whispered. They were facing a ghost, a legend, a man trained by the most elite military unit on the planet, and they were losing. The gunfight that followed was brief and brutally one-sided. Sam moved through the garage like he owned it, using every piece of equipment as cover, concealment, or weapon. A tire iron became a throwing knife. A hydraulic jack became a shield. The garage bay that the younger mechanics knew as a workplace became a tactical environment where every shadow and angle favored someone who'd learned to kill in much more challenging circumstances. When the silence finally settled, 3 gunmen lay unconscious and zip-tied with electrical wire. The fourth, the leader, sat propped against a workbench with his hands secured behind his back, staring at Sam with a mixture of respect and disbelief. "Samuel Mitchell," the man said slowly. "I should have recognized the name. You were in Somalia." Sam didn't confirm or deny. He was already on his phone with 911, requesting police and medical assistance. Tyler stared from his position on the floor, his leg wound forgotten in the face of what he'd just witnessed. "Sam, who? What are you?" Miguel emerged from behind the counter where he'd taken shelter, his face pale but his eyes bright with understanding. "He just saved all our lives." When the police arrived 20 minutes later, they found a scene that defied easy explanation. 4 armed men subdued by a 58-year-old auto mechanic using garage tools. The responding sergeant, a veteran himself, took one look at the efficiency of the takedown and pulled Sam aside. "Military?" he asked quietly. "Long time ago," Sam replied. The sergeant nodded. "Well, whatever you did back then, you haven't lost it." As the gunmen were loaded into police cars and paramedics treated Tyler's wound, the story began to emerge. Carlos Rodriguez had indeed been moving drugs through his uncle's shop, using delivery trucks to transport packages across state lines. When he disappeared with a significant amount of product and money, the cartel had decided to send a message through his family. Jake approached Sam as the old mechanic was washing blood from his hands at the parts washer sink. "Sam," Jake said quietly, "I owe you an apology. We all do. We had no idea." Sam looked at him with eyes that had seen too much but still held kindness. "You weren't supposed to know, son. That was the point." "Why?" Jake asked. "I mean, why work here? Why let us treat you like an old man?" Sam smiled. "Because that's what I am now, what I was before. That was a different life. This is the one I chose." Tyler, being helped to a police car for transport to the hospital, called out to Sam, "That stuff I said about you being slow." "You were right," Sam replied. "I am slow at some things, but when it matters, when people need help, I can still move fast enough." In the days that followed, word spread through the automotive community about what had happened at Rodriguez Auto Repair. The media picked up the story. Navy SEAL veteran working as mechanic stops armed robbery. But Sam declined all interview requests and asked Miguel not to discuss his military background with customers. He did accept one change. Miguel offered him a partnership in the shop, and Sam agreed to teach defensive tactics to any employee who wanted to learn. Not military training, but basic situational awareness and self-defense. Jake and Tyler became Sam's most dedicated students, approaching their lessons with the same intensity they'd once reserved for criticizing his work method. "Why are you teaching us this?" Tyler asked during one session. Sam adjusted Tyler's stance, correcting his balance. "Because being prepared doesn't mean you're paranoid. It means you care about the people around you." The garage returned to its normal rhythm, but with a new understanding. Sam still worked methodically, still used tools that were older than his coworkers, still took longer on some repairs than the younger mechanics. But now when Sam worked under a hood, everyone in the shop knew they were watching a master craftsman, someone who'd learned that taking time to do things right wasn't just about fixing engines. It was about being ready for the moments when everything depended on skill, preparation, and the kind of courage that didn't need to announce itself. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous. Sometimes the slowest worker is the one who saves everyone else. And sometimes the person you underestimate is exactly the person you need when the world goes dark. Sam Mitchell never talked about Somalia, never mentioned the missions that remained classified, never spoke about the teammates who didn't make it home. But every day, he showed up to work with the same quiet competence that had once made him one of the most elite warriors on the planet. Because heroes don't retire, they just change uniforms.